Which games will launch with the Switch successor? Over the past couple of weeks on the channel, we've looked at the price, the screen, the scheduling, even the brand colour, but we all know that on day one, there needs to be a major release or three to actually motivate people to get involved with the new console. I will address the broader launch window, lineup of games, the games for the first year on the market, separately, but I think the day one release deserves its own video. As we so often do, I think it's important to contextualize Nintendo's choices with reference to past consoles. This is a little tricky because for most of Nintendo's lifespan, and even as recently as the new 2DS XL in 2017, it's actually staggered its release dates for consoles. I think that is massively unlikely now though, and none of the Switch consoles launched in this manner. To recap, Switch launched with Breath of the Wild, 1-2-Switch and Snipper Clips, while the Switch Lite launched on the same day as Zelda Link's Awakening, and the Switch OLED model on the same day as Metroid Dread. Although past consoles aren't quite as consistent, I still think Nintendo's first-party console launch titles really can be said to fall into two broad categories. Firstly, there are the titles that launch as the system-selling game, almost always an established, safe brand. The game that is, certainly for the early years of its existence, synonymous with the console itself. Think Super Mario World on the Super NES, Super Mario 64 on the N64, Wii Sports on the Wii, and Zelda Breath of the Wild on the Switch. Generally, these are major hits, but it doesn't always work out that way. There is Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube, Super Mario Land on Game Boy, Super Mario 64 DS on the Nintendo DS, and Nintendogs and Cats on the 3DS, plus of course New Super Mario Bros. U on the Wii U. We can examine what made these games good or bad choices as launch titles, but basically they were clear attempts to leverage Nintendo's most popular brands to sell new systems. The second type of first-party launch title is what I would call the system showcase titles. These range from the acclaimed such as F-Zero on Super NES and Nintendo Land on the Wii U to 1-2-Switch on the Switch. Of course, the presence of this kind of title does rely on there being some kind of significant technological innovation besides just better graphics and processing. It would be very surprising if Nintendo didn't have some Nintendo-ish thing up their sleeve, but of course, the nature of the innovation will dictate the scale of what we can expect. If the biggest thing in the new console is a camera and microphone, then something like a new Nintendogs would possibly be sufficient to demonstrate the advantages of the new technology. But if they're thinking out of the box much more, I would expect some more dramatic departures. Generally, we would expect this title to be developed primarily by Nintendo's internal grouping, most focused on technology-led gaming, EPD4. These are the people behind 1-2-Switch and the Labo titles, plus Ring Fit Adventure and others. Although they weren't originally behind Nintendogs, the way Nintendo seems to have reconfigured its teams, it would not surprise me if they were also behind a new version of that series. Clearly, if we go back to something like F-Zero, it was a more core experience demonstrating the graphical power of the Super Famicom, but the core audience is not necessarily Nintendo's priority right now. That said, they will be the ones buying the early systems. I would say there's a 90% chance that there are at least two first-party titles at launch, and I think there's a 70% chance one is a casual title from EPD4. Likely as not, this won't be an existing franchise name we recognise, although I do think something like Nintendogs could be worth another tilt, even if it means rethinking the concept of a video game pet in the same way that Ring Fit Adventure rethought the same kind of concept that made Wii Fit. This one is an easier call. I guess the one that's tough now is to identify the mainline title that will go alongside it. Here I think there are really four major possibilities. There are two games that already have been revealed, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond and Pokemon Legends ZA, which have strong likelihoods of being cross-generational. Just by dint of already being announced, they have to be considered. And then there are the biggest titles that are almost certain to be in the Switch Successor's launch window, a new 3D Mario and a new Mario Kart title. Let us consider each in turn. Firstly, Pokemon Legends ZA. Pokemon is a huge draw for Nintendo, but it isn't a property Nintendo fully owns outright, and Pokemon games have not always been graphical draws or games which attract people to top-of-the-line consoles. I feel like a cross-gen Pokemon Legends title will be a huge seller, but it feels more like the equivalent of Splatoon 2 in Switch's launch year. The game you release 2 to 4 months in that you know will have a huge impact, but perhaps isn't leading the charge. Now, having said that, would the Pokemon company want to put their title out as early as possible? Arceus was released in January 2022, and the Pokemon company stick to their 3-yearly schedule with mechanical precision, meaning that there is a very strong chance that 2025 could also see a new Pokemon generational title, Gen 10. The only reason for doubt is the fact that 2026 is the anniversary year of Pokemon, and the fact that it seems like madness to forego a ready-made opportunity to take a pause and actually dedicate some time to anticipating and forestalling some of the criticisms that were made of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet in terms of being a little undercooked and buggy. But Pokemon has so many interconnected businesses with card games and television and more that it does rely on the games keeping a steady drumbeat of releases. And whether Pokemon Gen 10 is going to be released in November 2025 or February 2026, it will be a dramatic change from their past approach for it not to be released in the 25-26 financial year at all, meaning that the Pokemon company will probably want the Legends game to drop so that they can move on to focusing on the new generation. I don't think this means it will be a launch game, but I do think Nintendo takes the Pokemon company seriously enough that if they were insistent, Nintendo would not stand in their way. I would put Pokemon Legends as a day one drop at just a 10% chance for now though. Then there's Metroid Prime 4. And here's the thing, Metroid Prime is not a huge seller. However optimistic you want to be, however much you can show that the original Game Boy title sold a bundle proportionate to its install base and that the sales data on Metroid Prime Remastered only factored in a few weeks on the shelves, so it probably did incredibly, the blunt fact is that we're talking about a game that even in Nintendo's most wildly optimistic projections has mid to high 7-figure sales potential, not 8-figure potential, i.e. potentially in the region of 3 to 8 million copies sold. It's not impossible it could blow up, strange things have happened, but especially given the title's cooler reception in Japan, I just don't see beyond as being the day one title. However, there is a potential case for it, and the case is this. Nintendo does not want its absolute biggest game on day one. No, I'm not going mad, hear me out. They know this system has pent-up demand that is huge. The question is not whether they can get a ton of pre-orders. The question is whether they can sustain that pace once the initial hype has died down. For that, they need not just one big bang at the start, but a steady drumbeat of hit after hit. If anything, when demand is really high at the start, releasing a Mario Kart style game is potentially counterproductive. The audience that you want to capture to start with, the absolute core Heartland gaming audience, are going to be motivated as much if not more by a niche franchise like Metroid Prime than a broader people pleaser like Mario Kart. There is also a great history of Mario Kart being the title just after the launch title. Mario Kart 64 arrived 6 months after the Japanese launch, while Mario Kart Super Circuit was released 4 months into the Game Boy Advance's lifespan. And of course the Switch edition of Mario Kart 8 was launched a mere 8 weeks after the console was released and was the first post-launch first-party title to release. There are systems which have had to wait longer for a Mario Kart fix, of course, from the 3DS, which waited 9 months, to the Wii U, which had to wait 18 months. But given how long it's been since the last original Mario Kart, getting on for 11 years if you don't count Mario Kart Tour, and over 5 years even if you do, there is no reason to expect that Nintendo couldn't, if they wished, deliver a Mario Kart experience as early as day one. Another practicality is that Nintendo will require a decent number of online players, and perhaps that does require a fairly decent install base. That will come pretty quickly, I'm sure, so I don't imagine online play would be dry day one, but it's still a reason Nintendo might want to let other titles have their time on the sun first, and this brings us back to Metroid Prime. A new system is a shop window and it can make or break franchises. Luigi's Mansion was arguably not a game that lit the world on fire at first, and it took until the 3DS and Switch sequels for the franchise to really start to crank up. Still, the title received huge prestige from being a launch title that it might not have done were it just an experimental Mario spin-off a few months into the GameCube's life. This is a unique opportunity to raise the profile of a niche Nintendo property that they have poured a vast amount of sweat and treasure into over the last 8 years that Prime has been in development. Moreover, they're likely to have another Metroid game around the corner, as it will have been 4 years since Mercury Steam wowed the world with Metroid Dread, and so while I doubt 2025 will see a double dip on Samus titles, I think there's a 70% chance we will see another 2D Metroid released before the end of 2026, whether a stopgap Switch 1 Metroid Prime Samus Returns version or a full-fledged new entry for the new system in the Metroid series, perhaps even for the series' 40th anniversary in August of 2026. It's a roll of the dice to put Metroid Prime front and centre, especially given the skepticism of the Japanese audience, but what a vote of confidence in the franchise, and what a chance for it to be shown off in the widest possible scale. I do suspect, and I have another video on my Patreon at present which talks about this, that part of pricing Metroid Prime Remastered so low was to scope out the potential market penetration of this title if they were to try and have it hit the big time by launching the new system with it. Ultimately, this is a heart and head situation for me. I would absolutely love to see Metroid Prime 4 launch the new system, and if there's even a whiff of anything that would particularly benefit Metroid Prime as a title, for example some kind of VR capability which Samus's visor vision could help demonstrate, then it would be a particularly tantalizing choice for Nintendo. Perhaps it could even, in the style of F-Zero, be both a core experience and a tech demo title. And to reiterate, there's little risk of losing sales of the console in the first few weeks from choosing Prime as the launch title over a different title. Still, the risk isn't just in terms of the console, they also want to shift games. Other first parties will doubtless have some goodies at launch, and ultimately my head tells me that Metroid Prime 4 is not going to be quite competitive enough in this case. It will still benefit from being an early game, and I'm sure they will give it a ton of promotion and prestige in terms of the slot in the schedule, but I think there's only a 10% chance that it launches on day one. So that leaves us with Mario versus Mario. Mario Kart or Mario 3D. We've talked a lot about Mario Kart, but Mario Kart, successful as that franchise has been for a great many years, and particularly on the Switch, has never launched a console yet. But Super Mario has. Not always with tremendous success, it must be said. New Super Mario Bros. U was not exactly the dream title for Wii U, and Super Mario Land was a rather disappointing first effort on Game Boy, but when Nintendo really turn up for a Mario game at the start of a console's lifespan, it is often a defining moment for the system. Super Mario World on Super NES really spoke for what that system was. The Famicom, but bigger and better. Super Mario 64 also represented the N64 beautifully, opening up a world of 3D gaming that was truly revolutionary. The only other franchise that is capable of delivering these kinds of knockout blows is Zelda, and with Tears of the Kingdom only having just released, I don't see Zelda is going to be quite the ticket. Don't get me wrong, I think Ocarina of Time is likely to return, and I have a video also on the Patreon about the likely developers, but while the DS managed to launch with a remake, I really feel like a new system needs a new title, especially given the heavy reliance on old material this year. A new 3D Super Mario has the chance to really blow the doors off in a way that nothing else really can. That wow moment of Breath of the Wild was never quite matched in Odyssey. Don't get me wrong, Odyssey is amazing, and it was a huge step forward in the franchise in so many ways, but it really felt like just a really big step compared to Zelda's absolutely revolutionary blast forward. Is it possible to have a Mario title that just breaks onto a completely new level like Mario 64 did, and like Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild did? I'm almost certainly talking about something open world, a form they kind of trialled with Super Mario 3D World's Bowser's Fury side mode, and something that would allow them to truly open up a new world of wonder and surprise. A Mario title would undoubtedly give them the leeway to model any technological innovations Nintendo have cooked up for the new system without making those elements necessarily key to the experience. Also, it is Mario's 40th anniversary, or rather, the 40th anniversary of Super Mario Bros. In September 2025. This is why I always thought a new 3D Mario was a surefire hit for September, and Mario Kart was the likelier launch title. But with a new system launching almost certainly in the 2025 to 2026 fiscal year, I wonder if this matters any longer, and a 3D Mario seems like such an obvious, iconic launch game. And yet, there is a good reason why Mario Kart could work wonders for them, and that is the shop window effect. It's a call others have made, and it's a call that Nintendo have clearly given precedent for in Mario Kart 8, notably in the Wii U DLC, but I think the next title will heavily utilise other franchises, and the opportunities here for Nintendo to promote their other games is huge. Remember, the Switch successor will almost certainly be backwards compatible, and they will want to leverage the Switch library as much as possible to pull the company through the tricky transition period with the Switch on the decline, but the new system not yet having achieved mass market penetration. If the launch advertisements for the Switch successor also directly reference Pikmin 4, Luigi's Mansion 3, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, it gives Nintendo a chance to push these titles anew through the prism of Mario Kart. I guess the thing is, though, that they don't need Mario Kart to be a launch game for this, and in many respects the potential for Mario Kart isn't to promote games on the last system, but to push titles on the new one. Therefore, I'm changing my previous gut feeling that Kart would be a launch day title and saying that if there is a Mario game day one, and I'm at least 70% convinced there will be, then in my view there's a 70% chance that there will be a 3D Mario title and only a 30% chance that it will be Mario Kart. Obviously, there's always the potential for Nintendo to spring a real left-field surprise, perhaps the Mario Paint sequel, Mario Sculpture, using the new system's holographic technology. Still, that does seem like a very long odds proposition. As ever though, let me know your views in the comments and feel free to share, subscribe, like, check out the Patreon. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.